All right, so we're right on time, and we're going to go ahead and get started. As a disclaimer, the things that I'm going to tell you about today are of my own personal experience and some of the literature research that I've been doing online, and has no bearing and is not of the official view, opinion, or guidelines of Stanford University or of the Office of Admissions. And I have to state that because some people are confused. So again, this is just my own personal experiences and things that I had thought about, and hopefully when the next half we'll have a panel of a diverse group of students who have recently graduated from college and gone through that whole college decision process. And we'll be able to give you some insights about why they selected the colleges that they went to. In fact, they're from a variety of different types of colleges: state, public, private, small, and large research institutions. So it's going to have a pretty diverse panel of people to talk to if you have any particular questions. So we might as well get started with why you're here. You're here because you're interested about this college decision. It's something that you're going to be, it's really important. It basically defines where you're going to be for a good 4 years of your life, right when you're at that stage where you're trying to identify what you're interested in doing in terms of a lifelong career. So it is a really important decision, and one that you shouldn't take lightly. I should have actually retitled this as actually being an opportunity of finding your college fit, because there's lots of different colleges, there's a lot of different decisions that can be made, but really identifying which college is specifically and really well positioned to be a good pairing for you is what's really critically important. So finding this fit is that really important component. There are lots of different types of colleges, and that's what we're going to go through in the first part of this talk. But really identifying what values you have and prioritizing those values is what's going to give you a really great opportunity of finding that right college that's just for you. Okay, so these are some of the questions that we're going to address. What are the different types of colleges that are out there? Colleges and universities. You'll find that I'm actually going to use colleges and universities kind of interchangeably throughout this talk. There are some subtle differences that people have out there in the field, but most of the times people will use them interchangeably. And that's effectively what I'm going to be doing today. And that was quick. And what do you value in a particular institution? Every person is different. Every person has different background, different experiences that's going to affect various qualities about their learning and about the environments in which they feel comfortable. So identifying the institution that's right for you is going to be really critically important. And then finally, we're going to go through with how do you narrow down your options and find that perfect fit. You might end up with a whole stack full of applications that you've sent out. You've got quite a few come back with acceptance, but how do you whittle that down into figuring out which one will be best for you? So that'll be the last part of this talk. And if you ever wonder where we are, I have a wonderful bar at the very bottom you can follow. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. At this point, I'm assuming that you are all interested in going to a higher education institution. That is a whole nother discussion, that sometimes there is an opportunity to go straight into the workforce and be able to make decent money. But for the purposes of this talk, everyone, I'm assuming, is interested in going to an institute of higher education. And in doing so, there are three main flavors of higher education options. There's vocational, and apparently my animations are going to be interesting. The vocational technical career colleges, as well as community colleges and four-year colleges and universities. These are three very different types of higher education, and yet they're all considered to be colleges or colleges and then colleges and universities. Vocational and technical career colleges are extremely focused. They're very intense, short periods of time, maybe a year and a half, and they end up with a certification in a particular trade or field where you can go immediately and start working. Community colleges, on the other hand, have a little bit more broad-based education, in which case they're typically 2 years. You can either get a certification at the end or an associate's degree, and those credits are actually transferable to many, if not all, different four-year colleges and universities. So in terms of a financial thing, it's actually much more inexpensive to go to a community college for the first couple of years to get some of those early credits and then transfer to four-year colleges and universities, which are typically 4 years. But depending upon where you go, this can be either 3 or up to 5 or more years, depending. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And you end up with a bachelor's degree in a particular major or field. For all intents and purposes, a lot of my experiences have been on the four-year institutions, and that's where we're focusing on for the remainder of this talk. And we'll go into the diversity that you can find. But the diversity that I'm showing you in these four-year institutions actually can translate into all the other different colleges that are out there. So there's a lot of different diversity. First things first, major. Each one of you has hopefully maybe a particular subject interest in mind. And if not, that's okay too, but that's something that you want to think about. So if you have a particular major degree interest, you want to make sure that you go to a school that has that degree offering. Some of the different schools may have different, more diverse majors, like just biology. Others may be more specific and have something like biomedical engineering or biophysics. So that's extremely important to know what colleges have the majors or certification offerings that you're looking for. Public, private, and for-profit. These are all maybe terms that you've heard, but maybe aren't quite 100% sure what they might mean. And as we go through, you'll find that there's a lot of terms that you're going to hear today. And hopefully, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them as we're going through. I'd rather you ask a question in the middle so that we can know and understand everything that's going through as opposed to later in the talk. So feel free to ask questions throughout. OK, so private schools typically have a higher tuition, but they also have very large endowments, so they can usually provide really very generous financial aid packages. So that's something to keep in mind, and they're typically smaller in size, although Stanford is an example of one of the largest private schools that are out there. Public schools, far more affordable in terms of the cost of tuition, but they might not have and as such, they might not have as much financial aid to be able to provide to different students. Typically, they can be very small or large, so even within the public school system, there's quite a variety of different types of schools. And for-profit, again, are colleges that are specifically for usually a particular type of discipline, and they move you through very quickly, but it's also rather expensive, and usually financial aid is pretty minimal in those options. So campus culture. This is something that you can kind of get from a website, but it's really difficult, and it can make a huge difference in terms of how much you enjoy your college experience. So we'll talk a little bit of how to identify a particular campus culture and to see what fits right for you. And then also college emphasis and mission statement. So as you're looking at the different colleges, they actually have a little tab on each website that says the college mission. And you can click on that and see what kind of focus that college has. And it's something that's supposed to be ingrained within the college experience for that particular college. And it might be service, it might be a religious affiliation, it might be research, it might be a whole number of different things. And when you're putting together your applications, it's also important to keep that mission in mind, because if you mention that during your personal statement, or at least identify with some of the concepts in those, that's usually a pretty good thing. Costs. So depending upon who you are and what kind of background you have, this is going to be a very important determining factor. So it's always something to keep in mind, and it's different for each institution. Length of time to degree. This is usually not something that people typically will think about, but in fact, there's quite a bit of difference between knowing that you're going to be able to get out in 4 years versus some institutions where they have been known to have a challenge with students being able to get those really required classes that they're interested in having. So some of the public school systems at this point have a lot of students right now and are having a difficult time maintaining that 4-year degree limit. So it's something that you want to check in terms of looking at the different colleges that you're interested in, is how difficult is it to be able to get those classes that you want, and what's the average length time to degree. Semester versus quarter system. This is a very general thing that's different for every campus. And to be honest, it hasn't really, I've been on 2 different campuses with 2 different systems, and for me it doesn't affect the learning that much. But it should be taken into account. Quarter systems, you're able to go through a class in 10 weeks, so they're pretty intense, they move you along very quickly, but you also get to take a lot of different classes. So if you're interested in having some diversity in your classes, that's something to keep in mind. Whereas with the semester system, you have about 12 weeks per section. Get a bit more detail, have a little longer time in the class, but you can only take essentially so many per year, so 2 versus the 3 that you might be able to take with the semester system. And then liberal arts versus research institutions. And this is a big one and I highlight them because they're extremely different in terms of the experience that you get on these different campuses. Liberal arts colleges, is anyone familiar with the term liberal arts college? No? Maybe you've seen it in applications? Yeah. So there's the idea of the liberal arts college is that you're getting a very broad base. It's a very traditional college experience where it's very teaching focused. And the idea is that you'll have a broad education when you get out. So you'll have experience with philosophy and math, science, but also writing and maybe some service in there as well. So it's a more broad education, whereas with a lot of the research universities, the general requirements are rather low, and so you're able to take very focused courses in a particular area of study if that's what you're interested in doing. And then resources. This is also often overlooked by students. It's not something that you'll often think about with college decision, but it's something that you should, because at some universities they have an outstanding career center or internship opportunities. And so having these different resources can make, maybe immediately you don't realize that they're going to be playing a role, but when you're going through your college experience and your degree, you'll find that trying to transition from your degree into the workforce or into even higher education, going into graduate school or med school, having connections is extremely important. So networking is so key. So some colleges are really, really good at that, and some colleges kind of just let you on your own once you graduate, and you just kind of do your own thing. And that's fine too, especially if you are extremely motivated. So those resources can play a role. And then extracurricular activities. If you're interested in writing, it wouldn't hurt to go to a school that has a writing club or a school newspaper that you can get involved in. All of these kinds of things can help you get that experience that you're looking for in addition to your classes. So classes is one component of college, but there's also a lot more, right? You want to have a lot of different experiences in maybe something that you're interested in trying to pursue after college, or also, it's also important to things that will make you happy so that you can enjoy your experience. So geographical location is another thing to keep in mind. I came from a small island in Alaska. So for me, I wanted to go to a place that perhaps wasn't New York City, right? I was not going to be comfortable in that kind of environment. But for others, they might really like that excitement to be able to do anything and have something going on at all times of the day and all times of the night. So thinking about that in terms of your rural versus maybe urban setting, as well as maybe family considerations, and I think I touch on, oh, maybe not. And I'll touch on the family considerations later. But, and also housing options. So there's a lot of different options on different campuses. Closed campuses have all of the housing right on campus. So usually those colleges have a very strong community set. A lot of the students know each other. All the students are in the same area, even though they might be in different dorms. But there's a lot of community. Whereas other campuses might be commuter campuses. So you might be having a lot of people drive in. Maybe people aren't around in the evenings, so you don't have a lot of opportunities to interact with other students. And many of them are mixed. So you'll have freshmen on campus all in the first year, and then you'll have an opportunity to move off campus if you're an upper division student, and be able to have a group of friends that you can then maybe live off campus with. And then student and faculty diversity. Every college, every website that has a college will have, typically has this kind of information about how diverse their faculty is, how diverse their student population is. And depending upon who you are, this might play a very important role in identifying where you might feel comfortable with where you're going. So ultimately, it's where you want to go and the values that you have. So really considering what's best for you in your career is what's going to make a difference for you. And this is going to be decisions that will affect you for personal reasons as well as professional reasons. You don't want to necessarily go to a school that you feel totally comfortable in if they don't have what you need to succeed in your chosen career. So both of those need to be balanced in order to be able to find a place where you can really succeed and be really, really happy, and also be able to get the skills that you need so you can be professionally successful in what you want to do. So at this point, we're going to kind of transition into really, what do you value? What are you really interested in? What do you want to have in a particular college education? So these are just a list of personal considerations that I would like to have, well, actually personal questions that you can think about and to see how that might define where you want to go. All right, so excuse the animations, but they go up slowly usually. What is your learning style? So the learning style is extremely individualized. Each person learns a little bit differently. Do you prefer to be in an intimate learning environment with a very high faculty to student ratio, so you have only maybe one faculty for 20 students, or is it one faculty for 100 students? Do you mind being in that larger lecture hall, but be able to really take the initiative and get noticed and talk to your professors so that you can get those letters of recommendation for later? So that's something to keep in mind. Also, what kind of campus culture is best for you? Campus culture, again, is difficult to really identify with, but some of them tend to be more supportive and have a very strong community on campus and a very strong community presence on campus. Others can be a bit more competitive and kind of, you can still get that group feel, but it's definitely a higher intensity in terms of a lot of people jockeying for the highest positions in a particular class. And then also, what kind of activities do you want to participate in? And this is something that I touched on earlier, but kind of expand a little bit more here. So if you're interested in writing, do you have access to a school newspaper that you can get involved in? Are you interested in Greek society? Do they have a Greek society? Business. Some schools have international business clubs. Some schools have international business fraternities. So you can actually be in a nationally recognized fraternity for business, which really increases your network and can increase your exposure in different places. And service. Some schools are really pushed to have that mission of having service and being able to interact with the community. And some people really value that. Also, off-campus. So that was all on campus, but there's a whole off-campus component. College is about learning and being able to identify and find yourself, but it's also about having those experiences that you can really enjoy and look back on and have a lot of fun. So there's always, do you need a nightlife? Some people need that, and some people need a nightlife to have a lot of things to do, whereas others might want to enjoy outdoor activities, in which case maybe a more rural setting, again, getting back to location might be playing a role. So finally, there's also special considerations. Each person has things that might be effective only for them, whether it's family responsibilities, maybe where their friends are going is a particular preference or something that they're looking at, and location preferences. Maybe you've been living your whole life on the West Coast and you're dying to try the East Coast experience because the culture itself is very different. So these are things to consider. And at this point, I'd like for you guys to go ahead and do that. So we'll just take a few minutes and consider these different questions and what that is for you. So why don't we go ahead and take maybe 2 minutes and go ahead and write those kinds of things down. In terms of what kind of campus culture is best for you, this can play a role in different ways. The campus culture is very different, whether it's public or private, again, the for-profit. So you're going to have to maybe go and check out the different campuses yourself and see really what speaks to you in terms of what kind of campus culture will work. Campus mission as well as focus. This is also very important. If you really value service or you have a very strong religious affiliation, you may want to go to a college that has a lot of students that are there with similar views. But then again, you might also want to try something else and be in a more diverse group. So these are all things that are very specific to each student and definitely can play a role in your college decision. In terms of activities, this can play a role in the location. Ooh, this is going to go. Can affect in what kind of extracurricular activities are available to you. Rural versus urban again. And also if you're interested in particular sports. It's not written up there, but it can give you an opportunity to make sure that you're looking at kind of schools that have the sports that you're interested in, maybe extracurricular activities, things that you can keep both your body as well as your mind interested and engaged. And finally, family considerations. Perhaps you want to be close to family. Perhaps you want to be as far away from them as possible. These are all two very obvious options and are different for each person. Perhaps you have specific responsibilities at home that require you to stay close by. And in fact, last year when we had this particular talk, one of our panelists had that very situation. And interestingly enough, you have people going to many different types of colleges, but all ending up here at Stanford for graduate school. So regardless of where you go, there's a lot of different paths to the same place. All right, that was personal considerations. Let's think about professional considerations. It's great to know that you are personally satisfied with where you are, but if you don't have a school that has the resources that you need to be successful in your chosen career, it's going to be a little challenge to pursue maybe what you want to, and you might have to go down a different path. So it's a question of what do you need to be successful in your career, and maybe you haven't decided what career you want to have yet, in which case maybe you want to go to a school that has a lot of options for you, that has maybe a wide variety of different degree programs at a larger institution, which can give you that flexibility to kind of try a lot of different things to figure out where you want to go. Or perhaps you know exactly what you want to do, in which case it makes it very simple to find like a college that's specific for that one thing. But just identifying maybe what you need to be successful. Talk to people who's maybe in that field to give an idea as to what those might be. But it comes down to maybe having that major degree being offered to at that particular school. Again, those resources. Do they have, like, if you're interested in business, it is really nice to be connected. So do they have those networks that you can work with alumni, perhaps, to get internships at different companies? These kinds of programs are specific to some colleges, and others just don't have those available. Again, that extracurricular activities and liberal arts versus research universities. If you're really interested in research, you should probably do a research institution. Although, if you are looking for maybe the small college feel and want to do a liberal arts education, please know that most liberal arts colleges do have a small research component. And that is what I did, and then I went ahead to go do my graduate work and do my PhD. So you can still go into graduate school coming out of like a smaller liberal arts college experience if that's what you're looking for. You just have to look for those opportunities a bit more. And then also financial considerations. College is extremely expensive. It's gotten more and more expensive with each passing year. So it's something to think about, for sure. So things that you're going to want to think about is obviously the costs. This is tuition, but it's also room and board, as well as your financial aid package when you go ahead and get those responses back from the different schools. And again, that length to degree. If you can get out in 4 years, that means that's one less year that you have to pay for tuition. And most colleges will have a 4-year cap on any financial aid that you have, although some places will also give you an extension. So it's things to consider as you're going through. And again, public versus private. Some of the public schools have been having a longer time to graduation, but I think that's only a very small subset. And then also location is another thing. And then again, length of time degree. Yeah, so, in terms of costs, again, privates are more expensive, but they have better financial aid packages. So to be honest, if you have an interest in both, you should just go ahead and send out those applications and see what kind of financial aid you get back, because it can be surprising, actually. And then maybe some other considerations that you want to keep in mind when you're looking at different colleges. And these are the ones I put last because they are important, but they're definitely not deal breakers. And these are the numerical values, so grades, test scores, as well as college rankings. A lot of times you'll look at different schools and see, they're ranked here or there, number 1, number 2. You have to realize that those college rankings are given to schools based on a certain criteria. And that criteria is defined by the group that's ranking them, and they can be very different from one ranking agency to another. In fact, our federal government tried to put together a nationwide ranking system for our universities and colleges in the US, and it was so complicated and challenging that they couldn't decide on what features to highlight and to rank the schools by, and they just gave up. It took them 5 years, I think, and they just couldn't find a consensus. So at this point, the website that they're trying to develop is now having it so people can search for different features, because now they have all that information. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at college rankings, especially when it's university-wide, because one college might be ranked higher than another, but in a particular department, which is where you're going to spend most of your time, it can be very different, regardless of what the ranking is. One might be the top school for, I'm a biologist, so I'm focusing there for biology, but still be ranked lower than another school overall, just because of so many different criteria that are put into those rankings. So there's something that you might want to consider, but take it with a grain of salt. It really does depend on more of those smaller, like the departmental level, which is where you're going to be able to see some differences. And then I mentioned grades and test scores because some schools do have a minimum cutoff in terms of the students that they accept. I think there's always going to be some exceptions, but applying for colleges does cost money at each application step. Has anybody looked at the college application costs at all? What is the, excuse me. What are those application costs? They're 3 digits. Wow. Sorry, it's been a while since I applied to college, so when I was applying, it was far less than that. So narrowing down your options is very good. Eye-opening for me. So ultimately, it's finding out where you want to be in 4 years in terms of your education, in terms of, personally you. If you want to be able to develop in certain areas? And then can such and such college get you to where you want to be? And the reason that I'm mentioning all these different things is because when I was a high school student, again, growing up on a small island in Alaska, I had never stepped on a college campus until I went and had gone to my actual campus. So all of these different things that I'm showing to you now are things that I had maybe thought about, but really didn't dive into and really explore. So having these kinds of opportunities to come to Stanford and to be able to come here for a weekend and learn about different things, a little splash of this and a splash of that, has been probably maybe if you didn't even notice it, a really wonderful opportunity for you to be on a campus and to see what it can be like, to sit actually in the classroom settings and to kind of feel what that college experience might be. One of the things that I had considered for myself is that I wanted to go somewhere that no one else on my island had ever gone to. That was one of my criteria. And it brought me to California because I wanted to look at things a little bit differently and to grow and to have a different perspective. So these are kind of things that I personally took, but it'll all depend on what you want in terms of your college decision. And then, of course, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And do they have the resources to get you there? And this can really help you make your little list. Or could be a long list. This is just a list that you might be having. And this is going to be your starting point. This could be a really long list. There are a lot of colleges that are out there. But as we just heard, with triple-digit application admissions fees, it can be very costly to apply to a lot of different places. So it's helpful to really narrow down that list and to figure out really what values do you have and be able to prioritize them in a way that you can select particular colleges based on that value system. So you all have the list in front of you that you kind of wrote down with things that you are thinking about in terms of, what is your learning style? What is the culture that you're interested in learning in? Maybe some personal considerations. Let's just take a minute, 60 seconds, and then go ahead and try to rank those priorities on things that you might want to be most important and least important. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just an opportunity to maybe think about if you were to prioritize these, how would you do so? And we'll just get 60 seconds on here and do that. OK, I see most pencils have stopped moving. So we'll go ahead and continue. But ranking your priorities is going to be an important component because it's possible that you're not going to find a college that can satisfy all of the things that you're interested in terms of values. But if you rank them, it gives you an opportunity to kind of reflect on which ones do you find the most important and which ones are you going to be pursuing or looking for the most when you're going for the college selection. And that's part of narrowing down your list. So you can narrow it down your list even further by definitely getting more information. Information is key in making a good decision, although it's very easy to get boggled down in the details. So that's why your list is so important, to bring you back out and to remind yourself about the different things that you're interested in having in a particular college or institution. So these are some of the people and resources that you can use to get that kind of information. Definitely use your counselors, teachers. All these people have actually had a lot of experience with working with students at your particular stage in life, finding that position, that good fit and that good position. So definitely tap those resources because they're right there. And also your parents, of course. They're in the same house as you for the most part and can provide lots of insight and information about your college choice. But again, this is your college choice. Just remind yourself of that. College admissions officials. So there's no harm in contacting the college that you're interested in. In fact, it's highly encouraged. There is an entire staff at each university whose sole purpose is to provide you with information and to really sell their institution to students. So calling them, emailing them, clicking that button on the website that says contact us, all of that can give you a wealth of information, and it's all obviously free and available, so you can get all that information even before you submit those applications. And also current student and recent graduates. So maybe some people aren't aware of this, but the college admissions office actually has a list of students, for the most part. Not every college has this, but many of them do. Have a list of students who are willing to talk, current students who are willing to talk to prospective students about their experiences, about different aspects of the college. And hearing that from a student is sometimes way more influential for you than having it be told to you by an admissions counselor who's been sitting behind a desk for so long. They haven't been on campus for a long time. And in fact, that is obviously a stereotype. and many of them have been on the campus. But it is really helpful and very powerful to get that kind of information from an actual student who's there. And of course, visit the campus. That is huge if you can. Obviously you can't visit every single campus that you're interested in, but in order to identify that college campus feel and that environment in which you're going to be learning, this is really key. And it's also very important to go when there are students present. So something to keep in mind if you are planning on traveling and to visit these different campuses, if you're going during, say, spring break or during the holiday season, in winter, there might not be students on campus, and the campus can feel very, very different when it's completely empty than when the students are present. You actually can see how the students are interacting with each other, as well as maybe to different professors who are present. And in terms of visiting campuses, if you schedule it ahead of time, you can actually have an opportunity to talk to the admissions office and coordinate to stay overnight with a student so that you can really have that kind of college experience. It's definitely available. You can either do the overnight or you can sit in classes with different students, talking to faculty. They're going to be the people who are going to be influencing your education for the next 4 years and potentially setting you up for your career post-graduating. So being able to kind of meet and see what these people are like is important. If you don't sense that they're very interested in telling you anything, that might give you an idea of what the learning environment might be like at that college. Yes? Question? The question was, how would you coordinate that? And oftentimes through the Office of Admissions. So they will, if you can contact them and ask them about tours, opportunities to visit classes, and opportunities to shadow students, those are the things that they can tell you if that's an available option or not. I think it's a newer thing because I know when I was applying, well, maybe they had them and I did not know. So something to definitely think about. And then submit those applications. Once you've narrowed down your list to a reasonable number, or perhaps you have no financial constraint and you can apply to all of them. Either way, you can go ahead and get those applications out early. Typically, you can actually hear back relatively quickly if you get them out in a certain timeline. I do believe it's a rolling system, at least it was when I was a student. So getting them out early is always a good thing, and also you don't want to be scrambling to put together that application on the day or hour that it's due. Stress does not bode well in terms of getting those nice details on your personal statements done. So go ahead and get those early. And then, because this is talking about college decision, we're going straight into the responses come back instead of having that painful wait period. You're going to have a whole list of places that you might be accepted to, or maybe you'll have just a few. Regardless, I'm sure that there will at least be one college that says no, regardless of how painful that process might feel. It is one no, it doesn't really matter. So just to set you guys up for that in the spring when those letters are coming back, if a school doesn't, if there are some rejection letters that are coming through, know very well it is not a personal decision, but that it's just how life is. I was a graduate student, and rejection is something that we have all the time in terms of fellowship applications and whatnot. So it's a part of life, and it really has no bearing on what you can do, because you're going to have eventually some place to go, and you can go anywhere and do anything. So there's a lot of different paths to the same point, just to keep that in mind. But now you have the responses back, so what's next? How can we very well narrow down our list of accepted schools, which still might be pretty large? You might still have maybe 10 places that you apply to, although with triple-digit application fees, I don't know if I'd be applying that many. So it could be a larger number, it could be just a few. But again, you're at this point with a stack of applications or a stack of schools that you are happy going to just about any of them. Yes, question. When I was applying to colleges, it was $20 to $40. It also dates me, doesn't it? Oh, excuse me. It's been a long time since I applied. What about the cost for the SAT? To be honest, I can't even remember. Oh, okay. Yeah, so times have definitely changed. I mean, we could do the question with tuition, and I do not envy you with the timing in terms of going into higher education. It's expensive. College is extremely expensive. And that can definitely play a role with things. But of course, you're investing in your education, so it's very important. And actually having conversations with your parents is, oh, and we're getting there. Never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself. Excuse me. So yeah, so how do you narrow down that list from having like 5 or 6 places that you are probably happy to go to any of them, because obviously why would you have applied if you were not interested in going? So it might be really difficult to narrow those down. But one of the ways you can do that is just kind of go take back your short list and then really think about, well, why did you apply to the school in the first place? What really caught your eye on this particular institution? If you go back to that initial moment where you're like, oh, this is a place that I could go to, and really think about what that motivation was for selecting that college in the first place, it's good to do that. Sometimes you kind of, after you've been looking through so many application packages, you kind of lose track and it all becomes a blur. But this way, just reflect back. Why did I pick this school? And that can give you an idea as to what main motivation it was for that school. And then what really made them a good fit? And I think that kind of reflects back to the earlier question, is why did you apply? What made them a good fit? And then you can go ahead and how does this school compare to the other schools that I'm looking at? And here maybe you want to look at like rank or tuition costs or things like that. At this point, you're going to have the financial aid packages back, so you'll be able to compare on a variety of different levels. And this is also, again, where prioritizing, looking at your prioritized list and seeing which things did you prioritize as being the most important, maybe comparing those first and trying to narrow it down that way. And also thinking about what's your end game? Where are you going? I've mentioned this a few different times. Really thinking about where you want to be is really important. Even if you don't exactly know where that is, just having kind of an idea is helpful. I personally did not know where I thought I knew where I wanted to be. And so I went to a particular school for that degree. And my senior year switched it out entirely and completely changed my path. And part of that was an experience that I had in the college that I went to, that I had never had that experience before. In my case, it was research. I had never done research before. And I went to a research lab, and I absolutely loved it. That was my junior year, summer of my junior year, and I completely switched my majors. I was a dual major in biology and mathematics so that I could do secondary ed, high school education, as my career path. And then I did my summer of research, tossed out my math degree, put in chemistry, and then applied to biochemistry graduate programs immediately following. So you never know. You might go in with one plan and totally scrap it and end up somewhere else. But as long as you have the tools at the college that you're at to be able to do that, then you'll be just fine. It'll be great. So thinking about that end game. And part of that is like, where do you want to be? Do you want to be doing research? Do you want to be doing teaching? Find a school that's good at what you want to do. I mean, you might as well, if you can. Or find a school that's giving you lots of options so you can explore a lot of different things. So you can find what interests you most. And then what college is best to get you to that goal, to having those resources available. Oh, I think that's the next part. Yeah, and specifically looking at departments. So if you have a particular department or a degree in mind, knowing what that department has in it, like resources, availabilities, professors, the track records of the students. Some colleges now have some really interesting analytics about their students, like a lot of information about where their students go, how many of them are employed after they graduate, where do they go? Do they go to graduate school, medical school, working in their chosen field? All of these are things that are now becoming very important for colleges to be able to see the output of where their students are going. When I had applied, that was not available. But that is something that you guys can really benefit from, is to see, what's the output? Yeah, I have a degree, but what are you going to do with it? And having a school that has a track record of successful transitions from getting that degree to a particular job or a particular professional degree is very valuable, to have a school that's aware of these different things. And then also, it comes down to resources too. Do they have these kind of internship opportunities? And what kind of resources do they have? They might have a fantastic alumni group or an alumni center. Or maybe not the center, but at least having opportunities to interact with alumni. That's a network that you can use, gosh, the entire time when you're going through trying to figure out in terms of what you want to do. That's a whole other group of mentors that can be working with you to identify if a particular career is best for you. And just getting that input is really helpful. And then that's coming to like the job connections. So obviously your degree is just maybe it's like the second step in your career. The first step is figuring out what you want to do, and then getting that degree might be the second step, and then really transitioning that degree or translating that degree into a career is that third step. And making sure that the school has opportunities like job fairs, interview opportunities, alumni networks to really successfully transition you there is really beneficial. And of course, comparing the financial aid awards. To be honest, this is what like defined where I went because college is so expensive. So looking at your financial aid awards and recognizing what is free money, which is your grants and scholarships, and then what you're going to need to pay back, which are the loans. Just because it's in your financial aid package does not mean it's free money. It could very well be just deferring those costs until later, which is all very well and good because it's at very low interest rates typically. But yeah, the more free money, the better. And some of this might be, a very deciding factor for individuals, just because the cost and expense of college right now is just very, very high. So definitely worth looking at, and also worth having a conversation with your parents about finances in terms of what kind of burden you're going to have on you and how much they're going to help you with if they can at all. This is something that I hadn't really thought about as a student. I just went in with going with the best financial aid package that I could find because I was primarily funding myself. But being able to maybe have that conversation with your parents to identify, will you be able to participate in paying for my college education? And how much, as well as just figuring out like contribution. It's something that I didn't think about at the time, but might be beneficial for you guys now. And then seek out some other opinions and maybe some information from other places. And this talks to a few of the things that we talked about before, seeking out people to talk to with the admissions office, within your girls' schools. But again, ultimately, this is going to be your life. It's going to be your future. It's going to be your career, your choice, and your loan. So make sure that this decision is about you. This is a good fit for you. Again, it might be a good fit for you, but not for your siblings or your parents or your friends. And that is okay, because this is a part of your own self-discovery and figuring out really where you want to be and who you want to develop into. You can find a good place to do that. That is ideal. And then weighing your options. So ultimately, you might find some really great options, but it doesn't have everything that you're looking for. And now a perfect fit doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have every single value in line. So you might just have to make some compromises in some of the values that you have. And that's just fine. That is, again, life. You're not going to be able to find, and maybe you will be able to find something that has everything. But it's also very important to realize that you might feel like it's a compromise now, but it's still going to be a darn good decision with whatever you choose to do. So if you've taken into account a lot of these different things, then ultimately you're going to have some great options. And if all else fails, I'm a big list person. So making a pros and cons list for each school and seeing where it balances out, that's totally cool. So I think that that's a very easy way visually to kind of look and compare and weigh these different schools. So that's a really great option. So again, utilize those resources. You have a lot of resources at your disposal. I've mentioned them before, but I'm going to mention them again for emphasis. So parents, older siblings who have been at different colleges, friends maybe who have already made these kinds of decisions, talking to your high school counselor. I mean, that's their job in terms of, our counselor worked as both doing this school counseling. And then college websites. So much information is available online these days. You can find just about everything. And it doesn't hurt to just click on a few different things, maybe contact us, talk to them about being able to set up an opportunity to visit the campus, maybe talking to students. Even if you can't go to the campus themselves or yourself, you can email students. So as I mentioned before, the admissions counselors can give you access or suggest different students who might be able to correspond via email to give you some insights into a particular question that you might have. And then the admissions counselors, as I mentioned, parents and families, teachers, yes, teachers, a lot of great resources that are there. And then again, searching those, the college search websites, there's actually quite a few of them. And that is also very helpful because they actually have those resources to weigh and compare different colleges and to put in your particular values and interests and to pop out a list of colleges that might be suiting your particular interests. And that's kind of what I have here. So US News is a big one. They've got a huge college ranking system that also have some really nice search options. Big Future also has some really nice search options. The Princeton Review as well as Forbes. So all of these have really great opportunities for students to be able to go online, have a huge repository of information on different colleges, different analytics about the different colleges, and to be able to pull that all in one place. Eventually, the federal government's going to put together a really outstanding website, I think, based on what I've been reading. But I don't think it's up and running yet. So these are some of the opportunities that you have now to look at. And at this point, I would be, oh, let's go back there. Let's go ahead and if there's any particular questions that students might have about this college decision. Anybody have questions? Yes?
I have a comment on the application fee again. So I just checked, and it's almost in 3 digits. It's around $90.
Okay. Still
Still really expensive.
Still really expensive. So that was basically saying that there was about $90 per admissions cost, so still very expensive. Did everyone? Yes, question?
Can you talk about the option of working while you do college?
Oh, yeah. So sometimes in an so the question was the options for working while you're at college. And this can come in a variety of different forms. So part of your financial aid package might be an option to be able to work on campus. And those are ideal because you're right on campus and it can be in a variety of places. And usually you get an option as to where you might want to work. So I worked as a TA for a variety of different biology classes. So not only did I get the experience in teaching other students because I was thinking I wanted to be a high school teacher, but I also got to be paid to do so. So that was really great. Other people worked in the mailroom that I know of, the campus grounds crew. A lot of people worked in the various services that were on campus. And that can be part of your financial aid package, or you can actually, while you're there, talk to the job search committee, or there's like usually a job office that you can talk to about finding work on campus. Alternatively, obviously, some people choose to work off campus, and I think that's a bit more difficult. It's a bit harder to get on and off campus. Maybe you don't have a car, so it's a little bit more limiting. But there are definitely opportunities to find places to work on campus, for sure. Any other questions? Yes?
Can you talk about the early decision where you would have like the legally binding contract saying that you're going to go to that school from here?
So this is, oh, so the question was about the early decision. So basically signing off that you would be committed to a particular school. And you know what, that was not an option for me, so I don't have any experience with that. So I'm afraid I can't really comment on that particular aspect. Yeah. So are there any other questions? No? Okay, so we do have a little bit of time. So I don't know if you guys, obviously you read the description, but the second part of this is bringing in, we have 6 different students who are coming from universities across the nation. We have some that are from the UC system here, as well as some students who are coming from East Coast, some the Northwest, public and private schools, large and small. So at this point, we have about 7 minutes. We're going to start right at 11 o'clock with the panel. So you might want to take this time to just kind of relax, breathe, and then also think of some questions. These are going to be students who have just gone through that process about 4 years ago. Or a little bit more. And they're all with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different experiences. So they might be able to answer some of your questions specific to a particular type of college. Again, I came from a liberal arts college, but these are students that are coming from all over the place and might be able to provide you with some insights about these different college experiences. So if you have any specific questions, why don't you go ahead and think of those now, and then also you can reflect on some of those other considerations that you had. So yeah, so in 7 minutes, we're going to start the panel.